The Inman family projected an image of perfect harmony to those on the outside. They were regular churchgoers, attending a Woodport sing every Sunday. Yet, within their tight-knit circle, one could fathom what really happened behind closed doors. Back in '83, William and Sandra Inman's paths crossed at church. He was 18, and she was just 16. Their union received their parents' blessing, leading to marriage. The couple made their home in the modest community of Logan, located in Hocking County, Ohio. Bill Inman possessed strong religious convictions and balanced his job in construction with playing musical instruments for the Sky of Faith Evangelical Church in Nelsonville, Ohio. Sandra took on the role of managing the household. In 1984, they were delighted to welcome their son, William Jr. To distinguish between father and son, the head of the family was called Bill, while the younger one was known as Will. As time passed, William Jr. grew up. At age 17, in 2001, he met a 15-year-old named Summer Cook at church. Quite reminiscent of his parents' encounter, Will and Summer maintained a friendship for 3 years before getting married. When Summer turned 18 in 2004, the newlyweds began their life together by residing with Will's parents in a spacious house in Logan, Ohio. In that same year, when Bill reached the age of 39, he envisioned himself as a spiritual guide, transforming his garage into a makeshift sanctuary. He began hosting gatherings there. Despite local skepticism towards this self-declared minister's actions, his enigmatic garage started to attract neighbors first, then their friends, and more individuals seeking solace through prayer and leaving offerings. By 2005, Will and Summer were overjoyed with the birth of their son, Alex. Around this time, financial strains began affecting the Inman household, since Bill's religious endeavors were not financially rewarding. This situation led the family to consider relocating to another state in pursuit of better employment opportunities. By 2006, the Inman family had fully resettled in Florida. Both Bill and Will promptly secured employment in hotel construction. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer dedicated themselves to homemaking and nurturing young Alex. 2 years later, the Inmans made their way back to Ohio from Florida. By then, they had forfeited their Logan home due to an inability to reclaim it and settled in a rental in Vinton's countryside, starting a new chapter. Shortly after their relocation, in 2008, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kelly. By 2010, their family grew with the arrival of another daughter, Alana. As young parents, Will and Summer often sought weekends away for relaxation and rejuvenation. During these times, Bill and Sandra, always supportive, took on the role of caring for their grandchildren. The weekends were filled with joy as they cherished moments with their 3 grandchildren. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman secured a pastor's license and proclaimed himself the head of the Skinny of Faith Church. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable entity named Ranch of Mercy to assist the jobless and homeless. His vision was grand. He wanted to construct a large dwelling for orphans and widows. However, financial resources were quite lacking. To address this issue, Bill conceived a lottery scheme. Each participant would purchase a ticket, with proceeds earmarked for building the shelter. The grand prize was either a house or $200,000, plus 99 other significant rewards. The community became aware of this lottery through news and advertisements. Bill initially promoted it door to door, assuring participants of lavish rewards while emphasizing that surplus funds were destined for providing a haven for the destitute. Priced at $10 per ticket, Bill managed to sell 100,000 tickets, amassing $1 million for the project. The drawing was set for September 2010. In June 2010, personal upheaval struck the family when Summer expressed her desire to divorce Will after 6 years of marriage. This declaration came not long after she had penned a significant entry in her personal diary. She wrote, "I am utterly exhausted from constantly trying to please everyone around me. Do I not deserve happiness? Do I not have the right to love someone and feel that love in return? I'm uncertain if now is the appropriate time, but I feel compelled to share everything with Will. It troubles me deeply, yet he deserves to know the truth. He should be aware that I no longer wish to be with him. I need to be alone to rediscover myself and understand my current identity. At this moment, I feel like a servant, perpetually running around and obeying others' commands. I adore my children with all my heart and would never trade them for anything. However, I don't want them to grow up witnessing their mother merely following orders all the time. I'm unsure how Will might react to this revelation. There's a chance he could become angry, attempt to take the children away, or, worse, resort to threats or harm. It's important for our children to see us as equals. I'm aware that Will's parents might turn against me and try to convince me to stay, but such actions won't change anything. Last night, when Will asked me what I wanted, my mind was blank. All I could think of was what I don't want. I don't want to feel unhappy and trapped any longer, but I couldn't bring myself to voice these thoughts. So instead, I sat there in silence. Every day feels like a battle. All I yearn for is rest, to cry, and sleep without interruption. But finding a way out of this situation seems impossible at times. My hope is that by the time of my next journal entry, I'll have clarity on how to resolve everything. As the summer progressed, we moved forward with the divorce proceedings. Departing from the Inman residence, I took our son and both daughters along with my personal belongings. We sought refuge at my parents' home, wanting not to disrupt the children's relationship with their father or grandparents. Visits were scheduled regularly for them. 2 months following our separation, in August 2010, I began a relationship with Adam Peters while also securing employment at a bank in Logan's downtown area, working in a cleaning capacity due to a limited educational background. When September arrived, it marked another significant event, the Ranch of Mercy's house raffle, spearheaded by the Inman family. Although construction on the prize house was supposed to begin, both September and October passed without any progress. No raffle took place, and no explanations were given. The organization didn't seem to rush to refund participants either. By December 1, 2010, the Inmans received a notice requiring them to leave their rented residence due to significant unpaid rent. In response, Summer and Adam went to collect her remaining belongings from the Inman home. However, they were denied entry. This led Summer to call the police, reporting that her estranged husband was intimidating her and preventing her from retrieving her possessions. When the police arrived, Will and his parents continued to block access. Will even escalated matters by threatening Adam and clashing with an officer. Consequently, Summer filed a legal complaint against Will. She reflected on their relationship, recalling how idyllic it seemed before marriage but lamenting its drastic change afterward. Will's behavior reportedly became very controlling, affecting everything from her diet to household responsibilities and even intimate aspects of their life. She wasn't allowed to sleep without his approval and was confined at home without access to her phone or keys. Summer revealed Will's aspirations for a large family, his interest in polygamy, and his activities on related websites, including posting inappropriate images. She also disclosed threats he made if she pursued divorce and mentioned how her cats mysteriously disappeared. Will attributed their disappearance nonchalantly to them escaping through an open window. Following Summer's allegations, Will provided his version of events. He justified taking Summer's phone and keys by suggesting he suspected her of infidelity. Regarding the cats, he said that due to their wild behavior and the damage caused to furniture and family members, he relocated them to a shelter. As a result of these conflicts and accusations, Will was subjected to a restraining order preventing him from approaching Summer and faced penalties and probation. Amidst further investigations, a fierce battle for custody emerged between the families. The Inmans filed a police report against Adam Peters, labeling him a potential threat to the safety of Alex, Kelly, and Elena. Tragically, Summer's life took a dark turn on the night of March 22, 2011. Summer, just 25 years old, was finishing her shift at the bank. She wrapped up her cleaning duties after the office had closed around 11 p.m. She stepped outside to dispose of the trash. Summer had texted her partner, Adam, to meet her after work, but he didn't find her. By 11:30 p.m. worried, Adam arrived at the bank and began his search. He discovered her personal items scattered near a dumpster in an alley, her phone, keys, and a music player still playing, with headphones nearby in the grass. Her jacket lay there too. Alarmed, Adam immediately contacted Summer's parents to inform them of her disappearance and stressed the need to alert the police swiftly. Initially, Summer's parents called the bank, guessing she might have stayed longer for extra work and misplaced her belongings. Security personnel had no clues about her whereabouts. They then contacted Logan police to report Summer missing, emphasizing her punctuality and that she rarely stayed late at work. Police arrived at the scene, where they found Summer's belongings. They heard accounts from 3 eyewitnesses who saw her abduction about an hour earlier. 2 women out for an evening jog reported seeing Summer as she threw out the trash. At that moment, a white Ford Crown Victoria driven by a blonde woman approached. 2 individuals dressed in black balaclavas exited the vehicle and forcefully grabbed Summer, shoving her into the back seat despite her resistance and cries for help. One bystander's attempt to intervene was thwarted when the female driver incapacitated him with pepper spray, forcing him to retreat. The car quickly left the area. The 2 jogging witnesses immediately headed to the nearest police station to report what they had witnessed. Their account initially faced skepticism from the police, who found their narrative peculiar and doubted its authenticity, suspecting it might be a fabricated story. The police reached the abduction site of Summer Inman just an hour after her parents filed the missing person report. However, initial efforts did not lead to locating the missing 25-year-old. News of Summer's kidnapping quickly circulated through all local media outlets, capturing the community's attention. Hundreds of Logan's residents united in a concerted effort to locate her. As 3 days elapsed, the possibility of finding Summer safe and sound grew increasingly faint. Throughout this harrowing time, her parents endeavored to maintain hope against despairing thoughts. Shortly before her disappearance, Summer Inman shared a photo on Facebook featuring herself, her new partner Adam, and her children. The image portrayed them as a content family unit. Will Inman, who had access to Adam Peters' Facebook page surprisingly still on his friends list despite being Summer's current partner, noticed this update. It raises an intriguing question. Why would a husband befriend his wife's new companion? The backstory revealed that Adam, a man without stable employment, had been hired by the Inmans a year earlier, in spring 2010, for various household tasks. It was then that Adam and Summer crossed paths and developed a bond. Despite initial reluctance, Summer eventually reciprocated Adam's affections. Her diary entry reflects this internal conflict. When I looked into his eyes, I realized that the devil had taken over me. I didn't listen to what God was telling me. I tried to stop. My mind screamed, "Run, get out of here now." But instead, I stayed and let him embrace me and then delve deeper. I am very sorry about this. I am guilty. This encounter signified the unraveling of Summer's life within the Inman family. Yearning for happiness and love, she initiated divorce proceedings, which were prolonged. 5 days before vanishing, Will contested the proposed spousal support per child monthly, suggesting a reduction to $50 given his annual earnings of just $6,000. Will and his parents sought full custody of the children, but their petition was rejected by the court. After losing contact with their grandchildren, Bill and Sandra visibly deteriorated. They lost weight and were clearly affected, as those who knew them concurred that the grandchildren were the light of their lives. In March 2011, amidst the investigation into Summer's disappearance, the Inman family was located. They were found at the residence of Bill's 70-year-old mother in Jackson, Ohio. Bill, Sandra, and Will collectively asserted their ignorance regarding Summer's abduction. The Inmans recounted that on the night of Summer's kidnapping, they were en route to Cleveland to view a new property. However, they encountered car trouble after 3 hours on the road, leading to an overnight ordeal of vehicular repairs on the roadside before returning to Logan the next morning. They maintained that their interactions with Summer were generally amicable, with infrequent disputes. Yet, they attributed a shift in their familial harmony to Adam Peters' employment in their household, describing this phase as challenging. The trio consistently portrayed Adam as a negative influence, alleging he was the catalyst for the disintegration of their previously harmonious and tightly knit family. The investigation took a crucial turn when police noticed a white Ford Crown Victoria at the Inman family's residence. Upon inspection of the vehicle, a GPS receiver was confiscated. Subsequent examination revealed that on March 22, the day Summer was abducted, this car was in Logan. The GPS was deactivated at 5:30 p.m. that evening and reactivated the next morning, again in Logan, contradicting the Inman's claim of traveling to Cleveland. Phone records further corroborated that all 3 family members were in Logan on both March 22 and 23. Additional inquiries revealed that on the morning of March 23, around 7:30 a.m. the Inmans were at a car wash, engaging in a thorough interior cleaning of the vehicle. Bill, Sandra, and Will were all present, but Summer was notably absent. Following this event, they visited an auto shop in Cleveland for a tire change. While there, a shop employee noticed something odd. Bill was choosing to replace nearly new tires with used ones simply because he didn't like his current set. There was also evidence that the Inmans attempted to modify the car's appearance. Notably, Bill had removed a police spotlight that had previously been mounted on the driver's side door next to the mirror. Bill, Sandra, and Will Inman were apprehended and brought in for interrogation. Prior to their arrest, Bill assured his elderly mother of their innocence, attributing the situation to a test from the devil. Throughout the questioning, they consistently claimed they were unaware of Summer Inman's abduction and didn't know who the kidnapper was. However, after several hours and faced with the possibility of capital punishment if convicted, Sandra Inman's resolve faltered. Eventually, she disclosed the truth. Sandra confessed that they were responsible for Summer's abduction on the night of March 22nd. She detailed how Bill and Will had disguised themselves in black masks. Sandra admitted that her initial plan was merely to abduct and intimidate Summer. However, events took an unexpected and tragic turn. According to Sandra's confession, when Summer was forcibly placed in the car's backseat, Will restrained her with plastic ties around her neck, hands, and feet, intending merely to frighten her into granting him access to their children. As the situation escalated, Will realized that Summer was on the brink of unconsciousness. He panicked and desperately searched for a knife to release her, shouting frantically to his mother, "Oh my God, Mom, where's the knife? I can't find it." Amidst their collective fear and desperate search for the knife, the situation worsened. Summer ceased breathing and tragically passed away. Sandra maintained that their objective was never to take Summer's life. They merely sought a resolution to their custody dispute and hoped to ensure regular visits with their grandchildren. On March 9, 2011, a week after the kidnapping, Sandra Inman disclosed the location of the body. Summer's remains were found in a septic tank on the grounds of Skinnea Faith Church, near Nelsonville, about 30 kilometers from her workplace. Bill Inman had been involved in the church's construction. This place held personal significance for him and Sandra, as it was where they had married 28 years earlier. The Inmans were regulars at this church. Bill participated in its musical ensemble. Police uncovered the well by removing a concrete slab and unscrewing 6 bolts from the metal lid. When they opened it, they immediately saw Summer's legs. She had been thrown headfirst into the septic tank, still wearing her work attire. Her black t-shirt bore an ironic inscription, "I don't have anger issues. I have issues with idiots." A forensic examination confirmed that Summer had succumbed to strangulation. Apart from marks on her neck, hands, and legs indicating she'd been restrained, no other injuries were found on her body. This highlighted strangulation as the cause of her tragic demise. Sandra revealed that she originally planned to dispose of the body in a river but reconsidered and decided it would be safer to conceal it in the well near the church. She believed this location would ensure it remained undiscovered for a long time. Sandra admitted to feeling deep shame for her actions and their irreversible consequences. During the subsequent trial, 49-year-old Bill Inman and 28-year-old Will Inman did not take any responsibility for Summer's death. Throughout the proceedings, they stayed mostly silent, showing no visible emotions and avoiding eye contact with Summer's grieving parents. Sandra Inman, at 47 years old, stood out as the only family member who accepted responsibility for her part in the tragic event. She maintained that the plan to intimidate Summer was entirely her own idea. In a deeply emotional moment before sentencing, Sandra, overcome with tears, faced Summer's parents and begged for their forgiveness. Her speech, though broken by sobs and a quivering voice, clearly expressed remorse. Sandra admitted she saw Summer as a daughter and regretted her catastrophic decision. In 2012, the verdict was handed down. All 3 members of the Inman family were convicted. Bill and Will Inman received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Sandra Inman also got a life sentence, but with eligibility for parole after serving 15 years. However, among friends and church members familiar with the family's dynamics, doubts arose about Sandra being the mastermind behind the crime. It was commonly known that Bill had a dominant role in the family and usually made final decisions on all matters. Will, on his part, was seen as a pampered child whose desires were always met by his parents. Those close to the family speculated that Sandra's confession might have been a strategic move to reduce legal consequences for her husband and son. Currently, Alex and Alana are being raised by Summer's family. For quite some time, it was hard to explain to these grandchildren where their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather had gone. The case of Nancy Powell raises questions. What led to the crime against the pregnant woman, and what became of the child? The quest for personal happiness and a better life can be long, fraught with difficulties, and doesn't always yield the desired outcome. Many people are drawn to other countries or even the other side of the world in these pursuits, but sometimes, instead of finding the expected happiness, they encounter only pain, deep disillusionment, or even death. In the pursuit of dreams and overarching goals, it is crucial to remain aware of the people around us. The story of a young Guatemalan woman named Nancy Parres Gorsi has become one of the most resonant cases in Spain in recent years. The mother of two left Central America to cross the ocean in search of employment that could provide her daughters with a decent life and assist her elderly parents. However, the woman never returned home. Fragments of her disfigured and unrecognizable body were found with difficulty in desolate and nearly impassable areas. At the time of her crime, she was 4 months pregnant, and the perpetrator was someone Gorsi had hoped to share her life with. Challenging life in Guatemala. Little is known about the early years of the woman named Nancy Parres Gorsi. She was born on April 13, 1991, in a small village named Granados in the Republic of Guatemala. Nancy was the second of 5 children in a very poor family. Her parents, Jorge and Pren Gorsi, struggled to make ends meet. Despite this, they did everything possible to ensure their children received a good education and could live better than they did. After finishing school, Nancy was able to enroll at the university in the city of Villanueva, where she studied business administration and document management. She was a diligent student and graduated with honors. However, despite her academic achievements, significant career prospects did not follow. She worked as a cashier in a large supermarket during her studies and later was promoted to administrator, but her career progression stalled there. During her university years, Nancy lived in an unregistered marriage with a young man whose name is not mentioned in public records, with whom she had 2 daughters. Unfortunately, this relationship did not lead to a long-term commitment, and the couple separated. The father of the girls subsequently lost interest in the fate of his children and did not provide any financial support. Decision to relocate, Nancy continued to live in her parents' house, now with her own daughters, working at the supermarket and seeing no future prospects. The family barely had enough money for essentials, and something had to change. In 2013, Nancy's older sister immigrated to the United States, where she soon found a good job, married successfully, and settled well. Inspired by her sister, Nancy decided to radically change her life too, but she chose to relocate to Europe, settling in sunny Spain. At that time, she didn't even have enough money to buy a one-way plane ticket, let alone funds needed for initial expenses. For several years, Gorsi worked diligently, saving enough money to finally make her dream come true. In the summer of 2018, in July, she bought a ticket to Madrid and promised her parents that she would keep in constant contact so they wouldn't worry about her. She planned to find housing and a job upon arrival. She carried a few €1,000, enough to rent a room, cover food, and the most necessary items until she could secure a steady income. At the time of her departure, Nancy was 27 years old, and her daughters, who stayed with their grandparents in Guatemala, were 7 and 5 years old. Nancy didn't stay long in Madrid. After living in Barcelona for some time, she moved to the city of Ciudad Real, the center of the Spanish province of the same name. She called home almost daily, asking about her family's well-being, and she regularly sent money home, which increasingly helped her parents not only fully support themselves and her daughters but also to renovate their old house. Nancy mentioned she didn't have an official stable job and was making ends meet through odd jobs like cleaning in affluent homes or caring for the elderly and sick. Nancy never complained about the hardships. On the contrary, she told her family that Europe offered more opportunities, and she could never have earned as much back home, even working around the clock with no days off. It seemed she was completely satisfied with how her life was unfolding and even spoke of eventually bringing her daughters to Spain once she saved enough to rent a spacious and comfortable home for the whole family. A fateful romance. For a while, Nancy didn't share much about her personal life, claiming she simply had no time due to work. But in the spring of 2020, she admitted to her parents that she had met a man with whom she had started a romantic relationship. His name was Carlos Andres Bustamante, and they had met by chance while Gorsi was looking for new rental housing. As they resolved this issue, the couple grew closer and eventually started living together. Carlos was a year older than his beloved and, at the start of their relationship, did not have a steady income, surviving on random small jobs. In fact, Nancy was the main breadwinner in their relationship. She paid for housing and bills and often gave Carlos money for his personal needs and expenses. However, she never complained to her family about this, so her parents were confident that everything was fine and their daughter had met a good man with whom she lived in love, harmony, and abundance. By that time, Nancy's two younger brothers had also moved to Spain, with whom she kept in touch. She was particularly close to Dennis, the youngest brother, who had even met Carlos personally and found him likable. At the end of June 2020, Nancy and Carlos decided to move to the resort city of Santander, located on the Atlantic coast. In a phone conversation with her family, Nancy mentioned that the climate was warmer and better there, and she saw more job prospects. However, at that time, certain difficulties began to appear in her relationship with Carlos, which she tried not to discuss with anyone. Bustamante turned out to be jealous, temperamental, and quite cruel. Moreover, he lacked any career ambitions and was completely satisfied being supported by a woman. Most alarmingly, he abused alcohol and occasionally indulged in forbidden substances, although he constantly tearfully promised to quit and find a stable job. Gorsi was openly doubting whether to continue her life with this man when she discovered she was pregnant. Carlos was thrilled by this news and swore that from now on, their life would change for the better, but in reality, things only got worse. He continued to drink and use drugs, taking money from his civil wife or asking his mother for it. Moreover, he began to physically abuse Nancy, something she tried to keep from everyone. Alarming signals. On the evening of August 12th, while Nancy was video chatting with her parents, they suddenly heard Carlos loudly shouting and berating their daughter, demanding to know who she was talking to. He didn't believe her when she said she was speaking with her mother and snatched the phone from her hands. After verifying the truth by looking at the screen, he simply threw the device onto a chair and walked away. The next day, the situation repeated itself. Carlos again grabbed the phone from Nancy's hands while she was talking to her parents and daughters. He demanded to see who she was speaking with, insulted her, and even threatened harm. A frightened Nancy later explained to her relatives that her partner was just overly jealous and tried to reassure them that everything was fine. Her parents, however, tried to persuade her to contact the police, but she insisted that she could handle the situation herself. However, on August 17th, during a candid phone conversation with her sister, Gorsi ominously stated that if anything happened to her or if she suddenly died, Carlos would be solely to blame. Her words were chilling, but she did not elaborate further, only asking her sister to take care of her children if needed. This was the last time her sister heard Nancy's voice. Mysterious disappearance of the pregnant woman. On August 20th, around 2 in the afternoon, Nancy sent a text message to her father promising to call later that evening, but she never did, nor the next day, which was unusual for her. She also did not respond to calls from her family, prompting them to try contacting Carlos, but he did not answer his phone either. Since the couple had recently moved to Santander and had no friends there, and Nancy's brothers were on the other side of the country and couldn't quickly arrive to check on her, the situation was alarming. A few days later, a strange message came from Carlos's phone stating that he and Nancy had argued and decided to split up. Allegedly, she had packed her things and left in search of a separate apartment, ignoring his calls, and he had no idea where she might be. Her brothers then suggested that Carlos should immediately come to Ciudad Real so they could go to the police together and file a missing person report. Carlos readily agreed, but as expected, he never showed up, did not file the report, and, on top of everything else, he'd stopped communicating with the girl's family. The mother knew everything. The relatives of the missing woman themselves contacted the police to report her disappearance. Meanwhile, through Nancy's friends, her brothers found the address of Sandra Bustamante, Carlos's mother. When they visited her, they introduced themselves and explained the situation. She unexpectedly broke down in tears, confessing that she had suspected her son could do something terrible to his partner, but she did not elaborate on the details. Sandra also had no idea where her son and future daughter-in-law were. Carlos wasn't answering her calls but only sent brief messages asking her not to ask questions and to give him some time. She liked Nancy but knew her son too well and understood what he was capable of. The next day, Sandra was called in for questioning at the police station. Law enforcement wanted to discuss the disappearance of her would-be daughter-in-law and to find out the possible whereabouts of Carlos. She shared with the officers what she had already told the girls' brothers the day before and showed them a lengthy text message that Nancy had sent her a couple of days before she vanished. In the message, Nancy pleaded with Sandra never to give her son money, regardless of the tearful stories he might concoct. According to Gorcey, he would spend it all on alcohol and banned substances, under the influence of which he became very aggressive and cruel. He had no desire to find a job or battle his addictions, and his behavior became increasingly threatening, prompting the pregnant woman to consider leaving him. She ended her message by saying it was better to end things now before anyone got hurt. Another disturbing detail also came to light. It turned out that Carlos had several prior convictions for causing bodily harm, and one of his first victims had been his own mother, whom he had brutally beaten when he was just a 17-year-old teenager. At that time, he had gotten off with probation, but later, after leaving his family home, he had served short terms for assaulting women with whom he lived and tried to form relationships. The investigation was just beginning, but in the first few days, many curious details emerged that indicated this union was doomed from the start. In addition to Carlos being an aggressive, unemployed drug addict with a criminal record and suffering from uncontrollable bouts of rage, friends of Nancy revealed something interesting about her as well. It turned out that the woman was not merely a housekeeper or caregiver, as she had told her parents, because cleaning houses and caring for the elderly would never have brought in as much money as she was sending home every month. The slender, dark-haired Guatemalan with a striking appearance provided escort services to wealthy Spaniards and visitors. Indeed, her work was connected to the odd and sudden move to the resort port city of Santander, where she had more opportunities to earn. Carlos knew about his beloved's occupation and initially he was fine with it, since she fully supported them both, eliminating the need for him to find work himself. However, when she became pregnant, he began to lose his mind. Firstly, he was tormented by doubts about whether he was the father of the child, suspecting it might be one of Nancy's clients. Secondly, she continued to work even in her condition, and Bustamante was insanely jealous. He alternated between forbidding her to meet and talk with other men and forcing her to work when they ran out of money to live on. The money that the man took from his mother he spent exclusively on himself and his vices, horrific discoveries. In a rented apartment, for nearly a week there had been no known whereabouts of Nancy and Carlos. Carlos had been in touch, but only responded with messages and never disclosed his location. Surprisingly, it wasn't until August 26 that police finally obtained a warrant to search the couple's vacant rental apartment in Santander. What they found there was truly shocking and left no doubt that Nancy was no longer alive. Blood traces were found virtually everywhere in the apartment. Some attempts had been made to clean them up, but for the most part, they were visible even to the naked eye. In the clogged drains of the bathroom and toilet, fragments of bones, hair, as well as pieces of skin and internal organs were discovered. Forensic analysis confirmed that all belonged to the missing woman. Although her remains were not found in the apartment, the crime scene suggested that Nancy had been brutally murdered, dismembered in the bathroom, and her remains disposed of elsewhere. Carlos immediately became the prime suspect in the case. He remained unreachable and his whereabouts were unknown. Also found in the apartment was a package from a small hatchet purchased at a local hardware store. The tool itself was not found, but Carlos Bustamante's clear fingerprints were on the package. Security footage from that store showed that on August 20th, Carlos bought the hatchet, a pair of sturdy rubber gloves, and large trash bags at a market near their home. He purchased a small cart from an elderly vendor who immediately recognized the suspect from a photo shown to him. Arrest and search for the body. The day after the grim discoveries in the apartment, an unsuspecting Carlos unexpectedly turned himself in at a police station in Madrid, trying to deflect suspicion from himself. He went to report Nancy missing but was immediately arrested as the main suspect in the gruesome crime. Carlos claimed he had nothing to do with what happened, stating they had argued and parted ways on August 20th. He said he left town in a fit of emotion and was unaware of any subsequent events involving Nancy. He suggested that someone might have attacked her when she returned to the apartment to gather her belongings. Carlos's version sounded far-fetched, especially after police found his fingerprints on the hatchet's packaging. In the following days, nearby wastelands, sewer systems, and the coastline were thoroughly searched with the help of divers, but no trace of Nancy was found. The police then decided to track all of Carlos's movements from August 20th to the 26th using his mobile phone signals. It turned out he had spent 3 days traveling along the coast and had also visited the cities of Bilbao and Burgos before heading to Madrid. It was clear that Carlos was trying to cover his tracks, but it seemed unlikely that he would travel around the country with a dismembered body, leading authorities to continue their search in Santander. Street surveillance footage showed that on the evening of August 20th, he walked toward a large natural forest park. He returned to the apartment late at night and then went out again, this time with a cart filled with oddly shaped bags. There were few cameras in the park itself, so once Carlos entered the wooded area, he disappeared and later reappeared with the same cart, which was now much lighter. He then headed toward the railway tracks, beyond which was a steep cliff overgrown with bushes. From there, he returned much lighter, giving law enforcement a clear indication of where to look for the body. Where is the child? It wasn't until September 16th that bags containing highly decomposed human remains were found in thick underbrush on the hillside. These remains were identified as those of the missing Nancy Gorsey, divided into 20 parts with a hatchet. According to security camera footage, everything Carlos transported in the cart was recovered, but something was still missing. Nancy, as we recall, was for months pregnant, yet her fetus was not found in any of the bags. The condition of the victim's genitals and lower abdomen showed merciless mutilation with a knife and hatchet, indicating that the perpetrator likely extracted the fetus and disposed of it separately from the mother's body. Carlos consistently denied his involvement, gave conflicting statements, and continued to try to shift the blame onto an unknown assailant. However, traces of the victim's blood were found on his clothing and shoes, which he attempted but failed to completely wash off. Despite Bustamante's refusal to admit guilt, investigators were able to piece together the chain of tragic events and the full scenario of the crime. Forensic experts believe that on the afternoon of August 20th, following an argument, the man brutally beat and strangled his pregnant partner in the kitchen, where traces of blood were found on the floor and walls. Carlos then moved Nancy's body to the bathroom and went shopping at a hardware store and the market. In the bathroom, he divided Nancy's body into 20 parts using a hatchet and a large kitchen knife, placed the pieces into bags, and loaded everything into a car. He then went to the park, looking for secluded places to dispose of the body. Late at night, he left the apartment with the car and followed a pre-planned route deep into the park, scattering the bags in various locations, hoping they would never be found. Trial and sentence. The whereabouts of the fetus Carlos removed from Nancy's body remain unknown. He denied his guilt and claimed he loved her. From the time of the gruesome crime until his arrest in Madrid, Bustamante lived off the money he stole from Gorsey, which he spent daily in bars across various cities. The investigation, the search for evidence and witnesses, took law enforcement nearly 2 years, and the trial of the murderer did not begin until July 2022. In November of the same year, Carlos was found guilty of the premeditated brutal murder of Nancy and her unborn child, as well as the dismemberment and desecration of her body. However, many considered the sentence handed down to the murderer to be too lenient. Bustamante was sentenced to 25 years in prison and was also ordered to pay financial compensation of €150,000 to the parents and daughters of the deceased woman. As the World heralded 1993 with joy and resolutions, one man in London set an airy New Year's resolution of his own, a resolution to become a notorious killer. His target, unsuspecting men in the gay community. But who was Colin Ireland, and what drove him to declare such a harrowing resolution? Why did he choose to transform a symbol of new beginnings into a dark and twisted game of cat and mouse? Hi, my name is James. Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In today's deep dive, we peel back the layers of one of the UK's most calculated serial killers, a man who sought fame through the fear he instilled. We will uncover the story of how he executed his plan with chilling precision and overshadowed a bustling city's celebratory spirit by a series of gruesome crimes. To understand the mind behind the moniker the Gay Slayer, we must delve into the past of Colin Ireland. Born in 1954 in Dotford, Kent, Ireland's early life was marked by turbulence, upheaval, and poverty. Childhood spent in an unsettled home was the first chapter in a life marked by discontent and detachment. Raised by a single mother, Ireland's formative years were a carousel of different men entering and leaving his life. This instability laid the groundwork for a personality that craved control, a trait that would later manifest in the most sinister ways. His parents were unmarried 17-year-olds. His father left soon after his birth, and Ireland didn't know his identity. Due to his mother's money problems, they had to move a number of times. In spite of all the hardships, Ireland had a close relationship with his mother and remembered her as affectionate and benevolent. Ireland said that as a child, he was a thin, lanky little runt, always getting the worst of it from schoolyard bullies. This made Ireland frequently miss school. As a result, he didn't get a proper education and became sad and withdrawn, choosing his few friends among the most unthreatening kids. As a teenager, Ireland found himself entangled with the law. His crimes, though initially petty, hinted at a deeper struggle within a struggle for identity and a desperate need to assert his significance in a world where he felt invisible. Constantly in trouble of his own making, Ireland was sent to Borstal and prisons for theft, robbery, blackmail, and burglary. He ran away to London at 16 and hung out in an amusement arcade with a bad reputation, where young boys were targeted by pedophiles. Ireland was approached by some of them. Besides, one of his jobs was a bouncer in a gay club. That's where his understanding of gay subcultures came from. As Ireland himself described, the 70s I was entering what I call the lost period, common to those who suffer from psychopathy. In between custodial periods, a lot of the 70s were a blur. I spent my time detached. In 1982, Ireland married Virginia Zamid, who was confined to a wheelchair. His colleagues witnessed a pleasant family life when they visited them. They divorced 5 years later after Ireland's adultery. In 1989, he married Janet Young. He was abusive and, after 4 months, left his wife abruptly when she was away for the weekend, stealing over £10,000 from her account and leaving her completely broke. He moved to Southend-on-Sea, Essex, roughly 60 kilometers east of London, and lived in a hostel. There, he later moved to his own flat. In this flat, Ireland decided to become a serial killer as his New Year's resolution. Drifting through adulthood, Ireland's life was a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships, but beneath this veneer of normalcy, there was a growing fascination with infamy and a desire to etch his name into criminal history. Ireland immersed himself in the dark world of serial killers. He studied them not with a sense of horror but with an analytical eye. What made them tick? How did they elude capture? These were the questions that consumed him. He spent many hours reading about serial killers and learning about geographic profiling, hence deciding to commit his murders far away from his home. A killer usually commits crimes within a certain radius of about 7 miles from his home. That's why Ireland chose London for his crime scene. He also planned to have at least 5 victims because he had read that a person needs to have such a body count to qualify as a serial killer. The year 1993 witnessed a terrifying series of crimes that shook the core of London's LGBTQ+ community. Colin Ireland, a man whose unassuming demeanor masked a sinister agenda, embarked on a calculated campaign of terror, meticulously planning and executing a series of murders with chilling precision. Ireland's hunting ground was the vibrant gay scene of London. He frequented the Kern Club, a known gay bar, seeking out his potential victims. Here, amid the pulsing music and crowded dance floor, Ireland would select and study his targets, plotting their fates with cold detachment. Ireland sought men who liked the passive role in S&M so he could easily restrain them, as they believed it was a sexual game. Members of the pub would wear color-coded handkerchiefs to indicate their sexual proclivities. Ireland was posing as a dominant partner. His first victim, Peter Walker, was a 45-year-old choreographer. Ireland met Walker at the Kern, and what started as a night of perceived intimacy quickly turned into a nightmare. Walker's body was discovered in his apartment, revealing the horror of Ireland's actions: bound, gagged, and suffocated by a plastic bag placed over his head. Walker's death was just the beginning of Ireland's gruesome spree. Ireland placed two teddy bears in a sexual position on Walker's body and burned some of his pubic hair so he could smell it. While searching the flat, he discovered that Walker was HIV positive. Enraged, Ireland stuffed a condom into Walker's mouth and another one into his nostril. Each crime scene told a story of meticulous planning and ruthless execution. He carried a murder kit, a rope, handcuffs, and a change of clothing. Ireland left little evidence behind, confounding the police and instilling a growing sense of fear within the community. He was methodical, ensuring each scene was thoroughly cleaned, removing any traces that could lead back to him. He also stayed in the flat till morning to avoid suspicion from leaving in the middle of the night. To describe the nights after his murders, Ireland said, "I think that affected me mentally to quite a degree, sitting with his body for 5 to 6 hours, watching him gradually get blotches, go cold. It wasn't something that I could cope with, to be honest." Ireland disposed of all the things he touched by throwing them out of a train window on his way back to Southend. When the police discovered the body, they assumed it was the result of a sexual game gone wrong. 2 months later, Ireland returned to the pub, where he met 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn, who invited Ireland to his flat. Ireland tied, handcuffed, then beat and tortured his helpless victim, before suffocating him by stuffing pieces of cloth into his mouth. After murdering him, Ireland used Dunn's PIN and bank card to withdraw $200 from his account. The police assumed it was an accident as a result of a sex game and didn't link his death to Walker's. Ireland was getting more and more confident as his New Year's resolution was coming together. Ireland met 35-year-old businessman Perry Bradley III at the Kern pub. He was the son of Texas Democratic Party fundraiser Perry Bradley Jr. In his Kensington flat, Bradley refused to be tied, but Ireland told him that he couldn't perform sexually without it. Bradley reluctantly agreed, and then Ireland told him that he was a thief and just wanted his money and PIN. After Bradley gave Ireland his PIN, Ireland told him that he should try to fall asleep, as he wouldn't leave his flat till morning. Bradley did fall asleep, and Ireland realized that Bradley could identify him and strangled him. Then he placed a doll on top of the dead man's body. The heinous crimes of Colin Ireland not only sent shockwaves through the communities he targeted but also captured the relentless gaze of the media. The press dubbed him the Gay Slayer, a moniker that sensationalized his horrific acts and underscored the homophobic undercurrents of the time. Within 3 days, on June 7th, Ireland was back at the Kern. He met 33-year-old Andrew Cole, a housing warden, and went to his home. Again, Ireland handcuffed and tied his victim to the bed, demanding his bank details. After killing Cole's cat, Ireland strangled Cole. He placed a condom on Cole's penis and fastened the dead cat's mouth over it, putting the cat's tail into Cole's mouth. On June 15th, Ireland met Maltese chef Emmanuel Spider, aged 41. He cuffed, bound, and strangled his victim, then stayed in his flat, watching TV and eating Spider's food. After cleaning the scene, Ireland set fire to the flat, but it only caused minor damage. As the body count rose, so did the alarm. The gay community, already marginalized, now found itself in the grip of a predator who walked among them. Unseen, unknown, and deadly. But what was the motive behind these abhorrent acts? Was it a deep-seated animosity towards the gay community or something more cold and calculated? And what were the critical mistakes Ireland made, and how did they lead to his capture? As the death toll rose, London's Metropolitan Police found themselves grappling with a cunning predator. The investigation into Colin Ireland's crimes was a race against time, a complex puzzle that demanded not just diligence but innovation in the face of a killer who seemed always one step ahead. Initially, the investigation faced significant challenges. Ireland's careful planning and meticulous cleanup at each crime scene left frustratingly few clues. The killer's methodical approach in disguising his identity and movements compounded the difficulty, turning the investigation into a labyrinthine task. Detectives were confronted with a disturbing pattern. All victims were men from the gay community, their bodies discovered in their own homes, a sign of trust brutally exploited. This realization led to a focused investigation in London's gay scene, particularly around the Kern pub, where Ireland hunted for his victims. The breakthrough came from meticulous police work and a stroke of luck. a forgotten fingerprint at a crime scene, and a chance capture on one of London's first CCTV cameras. These were the pivotal moments that began to unravel Ireland's web of deceit. When Ireland was in Andrew Cole's flat, they heard a noise outside and came up to the window. Ireland gripped a horizontal metal bar across the window and forgot to wipe it off. The police then found these fingerprints, and finally, Ireland was captured on CCTV. Some witnesses said Cole left the Cairn with a man, and then police traced his route home. His train journey went through Charing Cross Station, fitted with one of London's first CCTV cameras. Each piece of evidence was a precious key, unlocking parts of a puzzle that Ireland thought he had so carefully hidden. But what was it that finally led to Ireland's downfall? How did the police connect the dots in a case that seemed to defy resolution? The relentless pursuit of justice in the Colin Ireland case turned a crucial corner with a single, seemingly innocuous phone call. Ireland, emboldened by his actions, made a call to the police, taunting them about his crimes the day after Peter Walker's murder. Having heard no news reports of his crime, he anonymously called the Samaritans and the Sun, telling them that he had murdered Walker and locked his dogs in another room. Later, the police received a call from Dunn's killer, taunting them because they had failed to link his death to Walker's. In his next anonymous call to the police, he asked, "Are you still interested in the death of Peter Walker? Why have you stopped the investigation? Doesn't the death of a homosexual man mean anything? I will do another. I have always dreamed of doing the perfect murder." After Cole's death, Ireland called Kensington police and said that he had killed 4 men and they had to stop him. He told the police that he had read many books on serial killers and said, "If you don't stop me, it will be 1 a week." He told the police that he had studied the FBI manual, Whoever Fights Monsters, by FBI agent and serial killer specialist Robert Ressler. "I have got the book," he said. "I know how many you have to do." Ireland later said that the TV crime series The Bill had also given him many of his ideas and police evasion methods. Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks said, "Just because you read books about serial killers doesn't mean you have any interest in becoming a serial killer yourself. But if that is your motive, then actually reading books can give you an awareness of the ways in which serial killers have acted in the past." Armed with this new evidence, the police intensified their efforts. A suspect started to take shape from the shadows. It was a breakthrough moment in the investigation, a lead that they desperately needed. On July 19, 1993, Ireland went to his solicitor. He said that he was on the CCTV but that he had not killed Spider. To his flat for sex, but there was another man. He didn't want a threesome and left. The investigation took a dramatic turn as law enforcement officers matched Ireland's fingerprint to the Collier crime scene. His arrest was a moment of triumph mixed with stark horror as the extent of his crimes came to light. Ireland's overconfidence, combined with advanced police work and the critical clues, helped bring the killer to justice. The capture of Colin Ireland was more than just the conclusion of a manhunt. It was a moment that brought some semblance of closure to the victims' families and a community shaken by fear. It also opened up vital conversations about the safety of marginalized groups. The trial of Colin Ireland was set to be a gripping chapter in British legal history, raising questions about the nature of evil and the psyche of a man who sought infamy through brutality. What revelations would his trial bring? A legal journey that would reveal the full extent of his chilling crimes was just beginning. The trial was a meticulous dissection of Ireland's actions, each day unraveling more about the man behind the murders. The prosecution presented a case built on a foundation of solid evidence. Ireland, facing overwhelming evidence, made a decision that stunned the courtroom. He confessed to his crimes, detailing them with a cold detachment that sent shivers down the spines of all present. His confession was not just an admission of guilt but a hair-raising narrative of his calculated and brutal actions. Ironically, pleading guilty to all his murders and confessing, Ireland avoided the publicity he so deeply craved. The heart of the trial, however, lay in the stories of the victims. Their lives, tragically lost, remind us of the human cost of hate and prejudice. Were these 5 murders Ireland's only crimes, or did he kill others? Serial killers often withhold some of their murders from the police to gain a sense of control over them, even in prison. In January 1993, soon after Ireland's resolution, the police found a dead gay man in his home in Soho. They believed this might have been done by Ireland. However, the gay slayer never claimed this crime, along with his other victims. A perilous shadow loomed over Hollywood star Tom Cruise in a chilling twist of fate. Cruise, then at the height of his career and married to Nicole Kidman, narrowly escaped a potentially fatal encounter. According to statements and police files that later surfaced, Ireland had spotted Cruise in a London bar in 1993. Driven by a perilous and misguided belief, Ireland falsely assumed Cruise to be gay and plotted to make him one of his victims. The killer's sinister plan was unexpectedly thwarted. Cruise, possibly sensing something amiss or merely coincidental in his timing, left the bar abruptly, eluding Ireland's grasp. Ireland's conviction was a foregone conclusion, but the sentencing phase was a crucial moment. The judge, in a powerful address, condemned Ireland's actions, emphasizing the gravity and premeditated nature of the crimes. The judge called Ireland exceptionally frightening and dangerous. He said, "To take one human life is an outrage, to take 5 is carnage. In my view, it is absolutely clear you should never be released." Ireland was sentenced to 5 counts of life imprisonment for the murders. But the story does not end with Ireland's conviction. There are unconfirmed rumors that Ireland strangled his cellmate, a convicted child killer, in Wakefield Prison, Yorkshire. After that, he was transferred to maximum security lodgings at Whitmore Prison, Cambridge, into a private cell of his own. His pattern of selecting victims, meticulous planning, and the psychological games played with law enforcement are now studied in criminal psychology courses worldwide. Moreover, the investigation into Ireland's crimes highlighted the importance of community involvement in criminal cases. The breakthroughs in this case were a result of not just police work but also the cooperation of the community, which had been terrorized by his actions. Ireland's case became a catalyst for discussions about homophobia and hate crimes. It highlighted the urgent need for societal change, not just in policy but in everyday attitudes and understanding. Ireland died on the 21st of February 2012 of pulmonary fibrosis and a fractured hip he had suffered earlier. Former prison governor Vanessa Frake, who had crossed paths with numerous hardened criminals, called Ireland the most frightening prisoner she had ever come across. She said, "I don't know what it was about him, he just emanated evil. He was proud of what he did, same as many other serial killers. What drives a man to commit such calculated and brutal acts of violence?" To understand Ireland's psyche, we delve into the complex labyrinth of his mind, piecing together a profile that is as disturbing as it is intriguing. Experts who have studied Ireland's case point to a combination of factors. His troubled childhood, marked by instability and lack of a father figure, may have sown the seeds of his later behavior, but it was his deep-seated desire for recognition, a craving to leave a mark on the world, that propelled him into the abyss of serial killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes suggests a high level of intelligence and planning. He studied serial killers not with repulsion but with a scholar's interest. He learned from their mistakes, aiming not just to evade capture but to master the art of killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes offers a chilling glimpse into the mindset of a serial killer. His need for control and recognition, coupled with his ability to blend into society, challenges our understanding of criminal behavior. Forensic psychologists theorized that Ireland's choice of victims from the gay community was strategic rather than personal. He saw them as easy targets, vulnerable due to societal marginalization. This choice reflects not just a cold-blooded strategy but a chilling indifference to human life. He said about how he chose his victims, "I think it's been something that's been triggered in me some time before. I felt if I was approached, it was likely that I would kill. I thought to myself, if I wasn't approached, something wouldn't have happened. I would have gone on my way and nothing would have happened." Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks explained, "What he does is he reduces the chance of choosing an inappropriate victim or somebody who wasn't going to respond by not selecting those who didn't approach him." Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Ireland's psychology is his lack of remorse. His confessions were devoid of emotion, his recounting of the crimes, clinical. This detachment points to a possible psychopathic personality where empathy and conscience are alarmingly absent. Detective Inspector Martin Finian said, "He was very factual about his acts, as if he was describing someone else's activities. Absolutely no compassion at all. I didn't detect much hatred. It was just matter of fact, like I went down my shops and bought this, went into the flat and killed him." In most cases, the murderers who kill gay people are gay themselves, and those blatantly homophobic are often secretly gay. Was it really a plausible excuse for Ireland to give in to his secret emotions? Ireland compared the buzz of his first kill to that of losing his virginity. Maybe these hidden feelings brought this simile to his mind. Was Ireland just dishonest with himself and others, trying to hide what he really couldn't control? Ireland said he was heterosexual and didn't touch or have sex with the men he killed. However, it's difficult to imagine that at least 5 people invited him to his flat for sex, undressed, and let Ireland tie them without even a single kiss. Can a person even decide to become a serial killer as a career just for the sake of it, without any ulterior motives? Choose the specifics of his crimes by pure logic, or is it something deeper? Or was theft the real reason for Ireland's crimes, and murdering his victims was a calculated move to prevent them from identifying him later? There's inconsistency in Ireland's story about the murder of Perry Bradley. He said that he had promised Bradley to leave him alive, but then it occurred to him that Bradley could identify him. This narrative strongly contradicts his whole intention of choosing his victims for murder to gain fame from becoming a serial killer. Was Ireland just exploiting homophobic moods in society to mask the mercenary nature of his crimes, hoping that it would win him sympathy from the public and reduce the term of his imprisonment? Or was there more than one reason, perhaps all of them combined? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspectives and let me know what other cases you'd like me to explore. Until next time.